And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another episode of Podcast on the Brink, your weekly dose of Indiana University basketball news and discussion. I'm your host, Jerod Morris. Podcast on the Brink is a joint production of the Assembly Call and Inside the Hall. For complete coverage of IU basketball, visit assemblycall.com and insidethehall.com.
It's time for Indiana basketball. Tickets for mini-series games are now available online at iuhoosiers.com or by calling 866-IU-SPORTS. Mini-series tickets are available in 6-game or 3-game ticket packages as well as individual games, so you'll have plenty of chances to catch the Hoosiers in action at Simon Scott Assembly Hall this season. Grab your tickets online at iuhoosiers.com or get them by phone by calling 866-IU-SPORTS. Go IU!
On this week's edition of Podcast on the Brink, it is John Crispin Day. Alex Bozich and I are joined by one of our favorite recurring guests, John Crispin from the Big Ten Network, to take a look ahead at the Big Ten season and, of course, at your Indiana Hoosiers specifically. We discuss the challenges Archie Miller will have in his first year at Indiana. We take a broader look at college basketball with the recruiting scandal and just how surprised John is at the upheaval that the IU program has gone through since he was there for practice last year. All of that and much, much more here in our conversation with John Crispin right now on Podcast on the Brink. Hey, real quick, a word about this week's sponsor, SeatGeek. Buying tickets to sports and concerts can be complicated, but there is a better, simpler way to buy with SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the smartest, easiest way to get tickets to live events because with SeatGeek's seamless mobile experience, you can buy and sell tickets in just 2 taps. SeatGeek helps you find the best seats at the best prices, fully guaranteed. There really is nothing quite like seeing your favorite team or musician in person, and SeatGeek will get you closer to the action for a great value. I have SeatGeek on my phone, and it's by far the easiest way that I've found to shop for tickets. I can be anywhere, and like I just mentioned, with just a few taps, I can instantly find seats to anything that I want to go to. I actually used SeatGeek to buy tickets earlier this year to see Yogi play here in Dallas. I bought my wife concert tickets for the summer. So SeatGeek is designed to make your ticket buying experience easier than ever. They save you time and money by searching multiple ticket sites to compare prices and find amazing deals. Now, here's how to get an even better deal, which is Podcast on the Brink listeners get $20 off of your first SeatGeek purchase. Download the SeatGeek app, enter the promo code BRINK, B-R-I-N-K today, and you'll get $20 back from SeatGeek. That's promo code BRINK, B-R-I-N-K. And now, on with this week's episode of Podcast on the Brink. We are joined on this episode of Podcast on the Brink. You know, this is one of our favorite. It's become an annual tradition. It's one of our favorite episodes that we do. We have John Crispin, obviously former college basketball player at Penn State and UCLA, now basketball analyst for the Big Ten Network. John, it is a pleasure to have you back on Podcast on the Brink.
My pleasure. Seriously, I mean, for you to say this is annual, it's like pretty soon we're going to start calling it a holiday.
Yeah.
This is a big deal. I'm happy to get ready for the season. Figure out what the heck I'm talking about this year, and hopefully you guys can teach me something in the process.
So, you know, before we start looking ahead, I want to look back briefly because, you know, obviously we spoke last year and you got the chance to visit Bloomington last year and you were there for the practice that was televised. And, you know, at that time, things were good. You know, Indiana was the defending Big Ten champs and they seemed poised to have another really strong season. And obviously things didn't really go according to plan. Are you surprised by the amount of upheaval that the program has gone through since you were there on campus for the practice last year?
Yeah, if I put myself back in that perspective, which was I'm on the floor at practice, surrounded by a ton of talent, a ton of enthusiasm, and a ton of optimism, you know, it's hard to believe that you'd be where you're at right now if you're an Indiana Hoosier fan. Now, that's what college basketball is really all about, though. Nothing is really that predictable. You had a great team. You really did. You had great personnel, some high-level talent. I felt like the system was perfect for the personnel, but with an injury here and there and a lack of consistency in the effort department, the season just fell apart. So as the season progressed, you saw it more and more saying, all right, there's going to be a change made because, the perception of this program has gotten to the point where there's kind of some negativity around the perception. That is, they don't play hard, they don't care, no one really wants to win here. And that's something that you do have to change. Whether it's really the coach's fault or not, you still have to change it.
So what is your impression so far of Archie Miller and what he will bring, and if he'll be able to, kind of correct some of those things that went wrong last year?
Well, there's kind of facets of, I don't know if this facets is the right term, or kind of phases. It's like a phased approach to a new coach coming in. And one of the first phases is just managing the outside expectations. And you do that with being realistic on social media. You do that by just kind of establishing your own expectations for the programs, your own expectations and your own demands. And you can't let the outside expectations, even the athletic department expectations, get in the way of what you as a coach need to do and know you need to do for you to be successful. I mean, you go back, Craig Glass was talking about hanging banners when they hired Archie Miller. And that's a tough thing for a coach to walk into because, yes, the expectation's high, but you still have to do the necessary things to get you to that point somewhere down the road, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. You have to set those expectations. And I think he's done a fantastic job of that. He came in, he was very humble about it. He was honored to be the next coach of the Indiana Hoosiers, but he also had a job to do. And he started to do that job. He started to get guys into the weight room. He made it a point to figure out who the tough guys, who the leaders were going to be. And I think it's establishing his system. And his system is less X's and O's, more about that consistent effort that was lacking in the past couple of years. So I think so far so good. The real challenge is going to come to me a year or two down the road, where the expectations are and the patience runs out, right? So I think that he's got to compete in year one. He's got to show that, look, we're going to compete, play hard, play the way you'd expect an Archie Miller basketball team to play. And then throughout that time, start to get the type of talent that will play hard for him, but will also, make the Hoosier faithful happy, because you do expect a high level of basketball as well.
John, you've never been in the position, obviously, of taking over a program like Indiana, but I'm sure you've talked to coaches around the country when they've taken over various jobs, a lot of people in the coaching business. What's going to be the biggest challenge for Archie Miller to get this group of players to buy into his system, to get them playing Archie Miller basketball? Because all of these guys were recruited by Tom Crean. A lot of them played for several years under Tom Crean, and it's going to be quite an adjustment for these players. How does he accomplish that?
Well, it's interesting because Archie Miller's a blue-collar guy. I played against him when he was at North Carolina State. Obviously, I know him and his brother Sean from the coaching profession. But Archie's a blue-collar guy, and blue-collar guys are usually the type of guys that demand from their players. They say, this is what I need from you for you to play. This is what I need from you for us to win. No offense to Indiana. This is no offense. Look, I played at UCLA. I understand this mindset, and I like this expectation from a program. But UCLA, Indiana, they're blue chip programs. They're not blue collar programs. And I don't think any Hoosier fans want Hoosier basketball to be known as a blue collar type of style of play. They want to be blue chip. And I think that's going to be a big challenge for Archie, where he's got to learn how to manage and navigate the waters of some of these high-profile players who are all about what I can get. It's all about me. It's all about what I need to get to the next level. Well, Archie's going to have to find a way to get blue-collar production out of those guys. I mean, think of a Miles Bridges with Tom Izzo. Tom Izzo does that so well, super well. And I think Archie Miller is more like a Tom Izzo than obviously like a Tom Crean, where he is a blue-collar guy. And if he can get guys like Miles Bridges not only to come to school at Indiana, but play that blue-collar, hard-nosed style of basketball, that's when you're going to see him really start to succeed.
Do you think he has the roster of guys that are going to buy into that mindset, that approach? Because I think a lot of Indiana fans' complaints over the past couple of years, we've talked about them here, I've written about them for years, are things like the defense and the turnovers, and those are basic fundamental things. Do you think that he has the personnel to implement what he wants to do in year one, or is it going to be years down the line before we see, the full, arsenal in terms of the system of what he wants to implement?
Well, the good thing is it doesn't really matter. And if I'm Archie Miller, I'm a confident guy. I just got paid a lot of money to take over one of the biggest and best basketball programs in the country. I'm talking like top 4 or 5 basketball programs in the country, and I got that job. They didn't hire the ideal that is Archie Miller. They didn't hire this idea of a guy. They hired me because of what I do and how I do it. So I'm not worried about year one, other than the fact that I am going to be as consistent with my messaging and my culture as I could possibly be. Everything I say, I'm going to stand by. And everything I say and do, I'm going to demand from my players. So the most important thing he can do, it's not about any individuals, any personnel. It's about being consistent with the messaging so that the new guys coming in understand that this is how things are going to be. And it does not matter. I mean, I don't want to say this season's a wash. It doesn't. I'm not saying that at all. But the most important thing he can do, it's not about any individuals. It's about there's consistency across the board. There's not going to be any more consistency, this lack of effort. There's not going to be any inconsistency when it comes to certain players do certain things and other players don't. No. Archie Miller is going to make everyone get in line. And I think that's going to make what this team successful. Of course you have the personnel. If you're recruited, I'm telling you this, if you're recruited to play Division I basketball, and I don't care if it's at Indiana, Wisconsin, Penn State, Nebraska, or Rutgers, you have the potential to be elite. It's not just a certain group of players like the guys at Michigan State last year, those freshmen at Michigan State. It's not like they're the only ones who are able to play at a high level. Anybody that's recruited to play major Division I basketball can win at a high level. We've seen that. That's why they're Cinderella teams. Those guys are talented too. They scout too. They've been recruited by big schools too. It's more of a belief than anything else. So I think if Archie Miller can get these guys to buy into the system that is this hard, consistent effort. Yes, it's a little blue collar, which is going to be different. They're going to see that they can win because they still have all the talent in the world. And that consistency of effort coupled with the talent that they have, there's still a lot of talent on that floor. They're going to win basketball games.
So with that said, John, are there any players in particular who you are especially intrigued by, who you think may really be able to blossom under Archie, whereas maybe they struggled last year? Anyone in particular come to mind?
I mean, look, I love Deron Davis. I always have. I mean, he's a big guy. I think he's the type of guy that fits in the system so long as he's able to get his fitness up. He's got great footwork and incredible upside. But I think it starts, and this may sound weird because these are guys that are going to be gone. It starts with the leadership. It starts with the guys at the top. If Archie can get guys like Robert Johnson and Josh Newkirk to really buy in, and I think they have. I mean, Colin Hartman's another one. Buy into the excitement of not only Indiana basketball, but the excitement of something new. That's how you succeed in year one. And succeeding in year one gets everybody else, Devontae Green all the way down. It gets those guys to step in line. I also love Juwan Morgan. I think he's a multifaceted guy, but I think he has to be a type of guy who's ready to just check somebody up and chuck an elbow every now and then, throw a hip check. I'm not saying do it, but it's more of a figurative type thing, like get physical like that. If so, he's going to be fantastic. But there are a ton of guys on this roster that I really like as individuals, but the Archie Miller team succeed because it's a group of guys playing harder than the other team. And this goes back to a game Dave Redson and I did last year. It was Dayton and Northwestern. And it was funny because there was so much talk headed into the game about how hard Dayton plays. And Chris Collins got really frustrated about that. I mean, he really did. He was openly frustrated with Dave and myself and say, we play hard too. And we were like, hey, we're not saying that you don't, but Dayton plays hard. That's what they're known for. So if you think that's what you're getting and you add that to some of the talent that you have on this roster, and probably one of the strongest guys in the conference in Freddie McSwain, who to me is the type of guy that Archie Miller is going to know how to use. This is still a really strong lineup so long as they all see this as a collective unit and not any individuals, because a collective unit is an Archie Miller team, and those are the teams that have won.
So with all that said, you look at a lot of the preseason predictions in Indiana's being picked anywhere from 8th to 12th. I think in the unofficial Big Ten media poll that I saw released earlier today by Brendan Quinn over at The Athletic, Indiana was picked 9th. Is that fair? Like, is that about where you would slot Indiana, or what do you think is kind of a fair expectation to have for where they can finish or should finish in the Big Ten this year?
My fair expectations, like everybody's optimistic right now. It's that time, like we're going to go into media day and everyone's going to talk about how excited they are and they feel good about their team. You're really going to like my team this year. Everybody says that, but it really comes down to what happens when you lose a guy. And, it really comes down to what happens when you lose a couple games. How do you bounce back? I mean, Minnesota proved that they were good because they were able to bounce back from a really tough skid. I think what's fair for Indiana is to say they could fall anywhere from 6 to 12, honestly. It's a tough Big Ten this year. And if Archie focuses on making big changes to the program, he's going to focus less on, obviously you want to win games, but the focus is going to be more about, like I said before, the consistent messaging and less about having to win every single game. So I think it's fair to say they could finish anywhere from 6 to 12. Are they better than 12? Absolutely. Are they better than 6? Doubtful. I mean, when you look at the teams that are up there in Michigan State, Purdue, Minnesota, Northwestern, Iowa, even Maryland, I think Maryland is a very good team with good experience from young guys that got to play a lot last year. So, like I said, I could see them anywhere from 6 to 12. 12 would be a lot of room for improvement as a team. It would be the type of season where Archie would say, all right, this was a rebuilding year. And more so not in the personnel department, but more so in the recapturing this idea of how we're going to win basketball games and the type of program we're going to be. So I don't like the whole, let's put them in at 8. That's where they are based on what people who really don't know that much at this point are going to say. Because truthfully, as much as I know this conference and know the teams and individuals, I have no idea where they're going to finish up.
Yeah. So, John, I'm not sure how closely you've studied Indiana's schedule, but let me go over a few of these early non-conference games. They're going to play at Seton Hall. They're going to play Duke at home. Then they're going to play 2 Big Ten games at Michigan and then Iowa at home. Then they're going to play at Louisville, and they're also going to play Notre Dame. And at Bankers Life Fieldhouse. So by December 16th, it's conceivable that they will have played potentially 6 NCAA tournament teams. Is that, when you're a coach trying to implement something new, is it good to be that challenged early, or would you rather, do you think he is looking at that schedule and saying, man, I wish we had a couple more easy games on the schedule?
So when Tom Izzo started the season last year, they had that ridiculous stretch to start the season of just horrible games. They're traveling all over the country. What he said, the first was, it's great for our guys to be challenged early. We're going to learn a lot about ourselves. After that stretch where they struggled, he was like, I think I put a little too much on them. So I think right now he might be saying, hey, it's going to be great to be challenged in this way. We're going to learn a lot about ourselves early. We're going to learn how hard we have to play if we want to win. But after that stretch, if you've had your struggles and then you're getting ready for the actual meat of the Big Ten schedule, you're going to look back and say, goodness gracious, could we just soften things up a little bit, especially in year one, where if you take a non-conference schedule, Penn State's had a couple, Northwestern had a weaker non-conference schedule last year, where you're able to build something, build not just a system, but also just morale. You're able to build some morale by winning some basketball games. And it doesn't come from just handling teams. It doesn't come from some of the 60-point wins that we've seen in the past with some of the cupcake. That you don't really build morale that way. But you want to get out, compete, and see how your hard work is paying off. If you go out and play Duke and lose by 40, there are a lot of lessons to learn there, but it's also a shot to your pride. So I think it's going to be a challenge for Archie just to keep the guys up, to say, look, it's not just about beating all these teams. Of course we want to beat these teams. And you're going to know from Archie really quickly that he wants to win, and he wants to win badly. That dude is a competitor. He is an overachieving competitor. That's why he's where he's at. And, he's around my age, so I'm starting to wonder what I've done with my life. I'm not the head coach of anything other than myself. So, his focus is probably going to be more on, like I said, the effort and building that team morale, that culture, that belief, and building that back up. And I think that's something that the crowd can get around regardless of wins or losses.
You'll be at Big Ten Media Day this later this week in New York. What's the biggest question that you have for Archie Miller I'm sure you'll sit down with these coaches on set. What's the the number one question you want to ask him? What do you want to know about Indiana and the experience that he's had so far there?
I would just ask him, how you doing? It's a simple, it's funny that most people have these specific questions about the team, but anybody, if you really know the game, know that, look, it's not about any one little thing. It's about the biggest things. And how's your family? How are you getting settled in? Are you comfortable? Have you had a tough time figuring out how you schedule things? What are some of the things that you've struggled with, that you're going to hope to change in the future? There's a lot of things that go, you got to remember, coaches' lives are sports. Coaches' lives are their teams. I remember sitting down with Coach Crean last year and just say, how you doing? He goes, well, you got this, and we had this yesterday. And I said, no, how are you doing? And he says, John, he goes, yes, you're right. He goes, this is life. This game, this team, what we're able to do, the responsibility we as coaches have, it becomes your life. So I want to know how Archie's doing in terms of just getting comfortable in the world of Indiana basketball, in Hoosier Nation. There's a lot that goes on that has nothing to do with basketball, and it dominates your life. It's the community that adds pressure. It's the community that expects certain things, and they expect you to be visible in the community. So how are you managing that? Because if he's having a good time managing all that right now, I think that actually will be reflected on the floor, where if it becomes a distraction, that's also going to be reflected on the floor. So as much as there might be certain things about individual players, hey, what do you like? Hey, who do you think is somebody that may not have been utilized as much as you may utilize them in the past? Someone who may not have been utilized much last year that you like this year that you think is going to take a big step forward. Yeah, there's questions like that. But you got to remember, these coaches, man, there's a lot to what they do. They have families. They want their families to be comfortable. It's not just that they get paid a ton of money and they can show up and coach every day. Coaching is probably 30% of what they actually do. There's the recruiting part of it too, that, you're trying to keep recruits. You're trying to keep people engaged in the Indiana program to show that you're not going to take a step backwards. There's so much that goes into it. So I just want to know how he's doing in general, because that'll determine the outcome of this season and many more to come.
That's a really great reminder just about the humanity of the people who are involved, because it can be so easy to just kind of sit back and it's almost like you're watching a TV show and people feel like characters and you forget that they're real people with lives outside of what's going on the court. So I'm glad you made that point. That's really good.
It's interesting though, and it goes across the board. It goes across. Anybody who has a big following on Twitter is open to criticism. Anyone who's on TV is open to criticism. Anybody who coaches and gets paid a lot of money to do so is open to severe criticism. And the criticism doesn't just stop at the coach. The criticism goes well beyond, and it goes to the family. These attacks don't just stop at the coach themselves. This goes well beyond. And that's kind of a scary thing, but it's the reality of our world. So one of the most important things a coach can get up front is just support and comfort, support from the community, being welcomed in a way that has nothing to do with who you are as a basketball coach, but more as a new member of the community. It's something that just we don't talk about enough. And I know certain coaches in the Big Ten, they really, like Pat Chambers at Penn State, he really has become a fixture in the community. And he said it took a couple of years, but once he realized the importance of that, the job part of it got that much better because he felt like he wasn't just the coach of the team. He was a member of the community, and the member of the community gets supported more than the basketball coach who's going to win and lose basketball games.
Yeah. John, one question I have for you that I'm really interested to get your perspective on. We heard at IU's Media Day, a few of the guards talk about how much they were able to relate to Archie because he played at the college level and kind of was able to give them that experience. And I don't think they meant that as a negative on Tom Crean. I don't think they were specifically trying to compare him. It was just more maybe just kind of a different perspective and how much they appreciated it. How important is that? How meaningful can that be for, guards like Robert Johnson and Josh Newkirk and young guys like Devontae Green and Curtis Jones to have a guy like Archie who played the position at a high level and, didn't necessarily have all the physical gifts, but really had to get by on grit and guile and competitiveness and smarts? How big of an impact can that make on them?
Well, more so now than ever before. It's a huge impact. And that goes to what today's player wants, needs, and demands. It goes back to that idea of kind of me first. But today's player wants to know why they should listen to you. And that's a generational thing, man. That's the generation that grows up as kids with no fear of adults. There are kids today that have no fear of authority, no fear of adults. And it's interesting because that kid wants to know why I should listen to an adult. They don't just listen to the coach. They need to know why first. And I think players today who don't have a coach that played the game, they take longer to kind of get a grasp on than the players who play for a guy that actually played at a high level. Because right away, you're going to look at that coach that plays at the Division I level and beyond and say, all right, well, I want to know what he knows because he did this. He did this at a level that I want to be able to achieve at. So you immediately see the value in the coach. And today's player is just different. I grew up in a world, and I'm not even that old. I'm 36 years old. I grew up in a world where, you listen to your coach. And when I didn't, I got in trouble. I got benched. You know what I mean? Today's player, it's more like, why am I listening to you, coach? You almost have to earn their respect first. It used to be you respect the coach first, and then the coach grows to respect and trust you. Whereas now it's players are going to say, why am I respecting you? You need to earn my respect if you want me to play the way you want me to play. So I think it's just a generational thing. Nothing wrong with it. It's just the way it is. It goes back to a world where players today are looking at, do you help me get to where I want to go? And if so, why? Tom Crean, some of the players that he has in the NBA, those were some of his biggest assets because it answered the question, why should I listen to you? Well, why should you listen to me? Look at some of the guys in the league. I helped those guys get to where they are. Victor Oladipo, look at what he started at and look at what he became. Why should I listen to you? That's the question right there that players ask. And Archie Miller has an answer. You should listen to me because look at me. I played at a high level and succeeded at a high level, and I didn't have half the gifts that you have.
John, I don't even really know how to ask this question because it's such a complex topic and the story is still so new. And with everything going on in college basketball, obviously the recruiting scandal has kind of given the sport maybe kind of a black cloud hanging over it. There's probably a lot of programs that are going to be impacted long-term by this. The story is still unfolding, a long way to go. But as somebody who played the game at the highest level, as somebody who I know just from talking to you and getting to know you over the years, cares deeply about the sport and wants it to thrive, just your reaction to everything that's gone on these last 3 weeks and kind of what maybe comes next for the sport.
Well, the funniest thing was someone asked me, are you shocked and disappointed by the news that came out? And I go, no. I'm shocked and disappointed at a lot of the other pundits out there. And I don't even know exactly what a pundit is. I'm just using the term. But all the other guys, talking heads like myself, who acted shocked and surprised by any of this. It's sickening to me that people are going, wow, I can't believe this happened. And this is just a problem. This has been going on for years. Get real. And it's all a part of this huge problem that is the money side of college basketball. It has nothing to do with paying players. That's not the answer for this. But the culture of basketball in general is, how can I get to be LeBron James? How can I get what he has? So is it any surprise that the way to get kids is to show them things, show them money, show them how I'm going to give you what you want somewhere down the road? The kid today does not look at hard work and say, if I work today, I'm going to be that much better tomorrow. No, they want everything right now. And the way coaches get to them is to speak to whatever their motivation is. Their motivation is money. Their motivation is power. It's success. It's shoes. It's gear. It's even just perceived power. So they want to have all the new cool stuff. They want to post about it, which is even more dangerous. They want to show everybody what they're actually getting. So if I'm a coach, the last thing I would do is give a kid too much, because they're going to put a picture of it on Twitter. I mean, it's speaking to the motivations of young players today. And what's something that no one's talked about, and I really don't want to bring this up, but this goes back to UCLA basketball in the John Wooden days. Like, do we want to act like everybody's been perfect? This is not just Rick Pitino. This goes back to the greatest coach that ever coached our game. He's had his issues too with some stuff that's gone on around the program and some individuals that have been involved in the program that help players get X, Y, or Z along the way. I mean, there's really no clean slate. When you look back to the success of college basketball, as college basketball started to become more and more popular, tied to television networks and how much money it brings in, all of that, shoes, TV, everything that comes with it. People, meaning the wrong people, got involved in the programs. People that had some level of influence that could give you what motivated you, which was money, stuff, power, you name it. Those people started to influence the program. So this problem is this goes so far back. I mean, how do you correct it? I don't even know. I mean, I kind of get sickened to hear educated people say stuff like, this is why you need to pay players. I'm just sitting there going, peel back the layer of the onion, brother. Like, there's way more to it. It doesn't get fixed by paying players. It doesn't get fixed by eliminating, shoe companies from the threshold. It doesn't get fixed that way. You have to go all the way back to the beginning, which was when you bring television, when you bring fame, when you bring all the things that the human side of us desire, some level of success, validity. I mean, that's what we're all searching for, some level of validation here, whether it's validation as I'm the best basketball player, or I have the most stuff, I have the coolest shoes, I have more money than you. It's all a level of validation. So when you bring TV into the mix and all the shoe companies, it just brings so many more problems that cannot get fixed by just paying players or taking shoe companies and money out of the mix. This has been a snowball going down the hill, and I don't think you can stop it.
Wow. Well, John, we want to.
I know that's probably kind of sad, right?
It is, but that's a great answer. I mean, that's kind of a real talk answer. So, appreciate the perspective. So, we want to be respectful of your time, and we could obviously keep talking. We'd love to, have John Crispin Day just last, last forever.
So could I.
But let me ask you a question, just kind of big picture about the Big Ten. You wrote two great pieces on BTN.com right after the season. You wrote one about the coaching changes that I highly recommend everybody read, and another one on Miles Bridges. And those are two really great pieces, and so I know those are two storylines that you're very interested in. But outside of those, what are you most interested to see in the Big Ten this year? What players or what teams or what storylines kind of have you most intrigued as we head into the year?
I think Iowa and Maryland is a big storyline. Well, I should throw in Penn State too. I mean, I hate to leave them out because I think they could be very, very good. That youth that struggled so much last year. I mean, those guys, they had so many struggles, but they showed so many signs of greatness. I think that youth and the experience that they got this year is going to make this Big Ten a really deep conference, to the point where you have so many teams, like I said, with Indiana, that could finish anywhere from 4th to 10th. And I think that's going to make it such an exciting year for the conference and Big Ten fans. I think the youth that got experience last year, and Michigan State's one of them, and they happen to be obviously a top 5 team in the country, and I think they're going to be fantastic to watch. That's certainly one of them. Coaches is a big deal. And what's exciting about new coaches is that these men, as individuals, as people, not just as coaches or a part of the institution, but as people, they get the opportunity to be part of something that is so fantastic, and that's Big Ten basketball. So I'm actually excited for new coaches. When Chris Collins took the job at Northwestern, I was so excited for both the conference and Chris Collins, because I'm sitting here going, man, this guy's a Chicago guy he gets to be a part of the growth and kind of the surge that is Northwestern basketball and being a powerhouse in that region. I mean, it's exciting for some of these men as individuals to get this opportunity. I mean, we think of them as almost like the big bad wolf because they make a lot of money. It's almost like that's the bad thing. They've worked a lot to get to where they're at. So I'm excited for some of those new coaches to be able to make things happen. And I think Ohio State's going to be an interesting one. It's an interesting storyline because it's a complete shift in approach. Ohio State, and in my opinion, I may be totally wrong, and I am wrong a lot, and people like to tell me that, so it's okay. Ohio State took a huge change. They went from a coach who could coach high-level McDonald's All-Americans and win basketball games, but has shown some struggles along the way to do so in the past few years, to a coach in Chris Holtmann who can coach less talented players, but coach them to a level like Brad Stevens did that is well beyond anything you'd expect. So I think Ohio State, what they're saying with that hire is, we just want to compete consistently every single year and be a top 5-6 team in the Big Ten, much like Wisconsin's been able to do in the past. We are going to get coached up. We're going to have a clean program. We're going to have players that many may have passed on, but they're going to compete at a high level, and they're going to be some of the best coached players out there. And I think it's going to be interesting to follow that because I think Ohio State is going to become much like Wisconsin's been over the last 15, 16, 17 years.
Well, John, we appreciate your insight. We look forward to hopefully you being able to do a lot of IU games this year, and we always look forward to your appearances here on Podcast on the Brink.
Yeah, man, any time. I'm sure I'll learn a lot in the next couple of days at Media Day, so maybe I'll have to come back on to correct every dumb thing I've said today.
We'd love to have you back on. Thanks for your time, John.
Thank you. Appreciate it, John.
My pleasure, guys. Hey, anytime.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Podcast on the Brink. We always appreciate you being here. To get more from me and from Alex, visit assemblycall.com and insidethehall.com for complete coverage of Indiana University basketball. If you liked this episode, please consider sharing it with a friend or family member who loves IU basketball as much as you do. You can also support the show by leaving a rating and review on iTunes, which helps us get the word out to more IU fans like yourself. We'll be back next week with another brand new episode. Until then, as always, go Hoosiers.